Are you a dad that questions whether your 9 to 5 is adding to the quality of your family life or taking away from it? Do you have this idea in your head of something greater, something more? Maybe it's a business to start, a side gig, or just a passion that you want to pursue. Well, my guest today is Kolby Goodman, and we're going to talk about how Kolby transformed his life and over the last 10 years has been able to pursue his passion. And as the father of a 2-year-old son and husband to a loving wife, Kolby took a chance to step out and follow his passion to leave a 9 to 5. But he's not completely anti 9 to 5. Kolby wants you to live a life of purpose. He wants you to be able to determine who you spend your time with, what you spend your time doing, and where you get to do it. So he's going to share in this episode exactly how you know if your 9 to 5 is a good fit for you. He's going to also let you know that you can shift to another 9 to 5 to find your dream job, that job that allows you to be the dad you want to be, that allows you to be the husband you want to be, and of course, allows you to be the man that you feel that you are called to be. Kolby is a seasoned hiring coach and keynote speaker known for empowering individuals and organizations to make better hiring decisions. But he wants you to be a better dad and make better dad decisions. In this episode, we're going to dive into Kolby's experience. He's going to give you some key things to think about if you're thinking about stepping out of that 9 to 5. And we both want you to live a life of purpose and a life of passion. This episode on the Dad's Making a Difference podcast with Kolby Goodman starts right now. Kolby, welcome to the Dad's Making a Difference podcast. Great to see you today.
Cam, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Man, since we had our pre-call, I've been excited for this conversation. I'm always excited to talk to new-ish dads. And I say new-ish because your son is 2 years old, so you're new-ish, but you're going through the season of firsts. And before we pressed record, you were sharing some of those firsts with me, and I'd love for you to share some of those as we go through our conversation today. But Kolby, you've been on a path in your life, even over the last decade, where your brain just pushed you to do something different, to create your own path, to forge your own path. And now you have a 2-year-old son and a wife, and probably not in that order. You had the wife and then the 2-year-old son. And then, but now you're living a life that you call the shots. And even though those shots might not always be predictable and comfortable, you are making change in your family. And I want to dive into your story. So, Kolby, why don't we start before I just share everything and you don't get to say a word? Why don't we dive in? Kolby, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you? What was it like for you? Let's start with you as a young man. What was it like for you growing up?
Yeah, so I came from a split home. My parents divorced when I was 10, and I went through a lot of adult experiences early. Had to be the man of the house, had to incorporate a new man to the house with my stepfather, butted heads with every adult that told me what to do for a very long time. But I found an outlet and independence in work.
Mm.
Um, Always been semi-entrepreneurial. The first story I have for that is when I was 5 years old. I took my Halloween candy on the morning of November 1st and set out in my front yard. Instead of having a lemonade stand, I had a candy stand. Sold
So
all the candy I didn't want to eat and ended up buying a couple Slurpees from the 7-Eleven down the street with that. And since then, I've kind of always been on an entrepreneurial tear. Was a party DJ in high school, doing dances, doing bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras, um, and had always had a knack for, I mean, honestly, man, I say working smarter, not harder. But when I was a kid, I was easy. Didn't want to work hard. Honestly, I didn't have to. Pretty bright kid, could kind of just show up and get a B, B plus. And so I didn't really have to try. And when I was forced to do so, I always wanted to take the most direct path and the optimized path. And I think that mindset, coupled with coming out of college and being thrown into my first corporate job as a IT help desk professional, answering the phones, resetting passwords, setting up email inboxes, was always looking to work smarter and automate and systematize, which got me to a place where I could. I got a lot of promotions, got a lot of advancement, was working on projects that other people my age, my peers were not working on, getting more recognition. So it got me really far in that realm. But towards the end of my tenure in corporate IT management, I was working on projects I no longer was really caring about with people I could not stand, working on projects that are making people I never met a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And I kind of took pause. It's like, is this how I want to spend the next 40 years of my life and then retire? Is this the kind of value I want to put into the world? And the answer obviously was a resounding no. And so looking around and looking at myself, doing some inner work, talking to my friends and my peers, kind of realized that I had this knack for helping others advocate for themselves. I could write resumes, I could interview for myself, I could play a bit of office politics, but really connect with others in the workplace, which I think you and I both know, and your listeners probably know too. Human qualities EQ is kind of lacking in the technology departments of a lot of companies out there.
What do you mean?
And so took that knowledge and started a consulting and coaching business where
Amazing.
fast forward a decade plus now, I've helped over 4,000 people, done over 200 keynotes, workshops, and educational events in helping people find more meaningful work, get excited about going to work every day, working under leadership that inspires them, making more money,
Mhm.
and taking them from a place where they felt like they were hopeless and helpless and stuck to a place where there's meaning and opportunity again in their careers and in their lives.
I love it. That path, that's why I wanted to bring you on. That's why, because, we're talking about this, so I hope it's okay that I share this. I just interviewed a guest who wrote a book that's done 100,000 copies. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's amazing. And he has this incredible lifestyle. And I just, you listen and you're like, what can I take notes? But I'm always so interested in guys who are in it, who are like in the muck, who are going through it, who are just starting out. And you've done this for a decade. But what I mean about just starting out is that this journey is now your family's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a wife and a 2-year-old son. And now you're building what you called, and I would reaffirm, is a lifestyle business. Because there's lots of men who listen to this podcast who would probably think, oh, yeah, it'd be great to make 7 figures or multi 6 figures. Or they're listening to some of these conversations we're having, like, that doesn't apply to me. Like, I work a job, I have an idea in my head, I have a passion in my heart that I want to do, but I got a job right now. And they either don't know where to start, they don't know that they can take the risk to do it, and they don't need. I think there's this misunderstanding that you need all this resource, all this time, all this knowledge to just start doing what you're passionate about. And you reaffirmed that before we press record, that that is not necessary. So you're in this point in your life. You have a wife, you have a son, and now you're like, "Yeah, I need something that's going to be a lifestyle business." So what did this transition look like for you from
Yeah.
you're speaking, you're coaching, you're doing that, to
Yeah.
now I'm dictating terms of how I'm making money?
Yeah. I think ultimately, this has always been the backbone of my business since I started,
Mm,
right? I looked at working for 40 plus years and retiring and kind of pushing off those joys and that excitement and that freedom as its own kind of prison, right? I was, in my 20s and 30s and thinking about what does it, where life look like when I'm 65 and can retire. I literally got dizzy. There were psychosomatic symptoms of my anxiety about this timeline. And when I started, what I knew is that I needed to develop processes, systems, and a mindset that would allow me to scale monetarily, scale my impact in a way that my business fit into my life and not vice versa.
mm,
Right? There's so many stories out there of the richest, most quote unquote successful people in the world that have ignored their wives, their children, their health, their social responsibilities. And yes, they have multiple commas in the bank, right? But who are they as people? And I think for me, I wanted to be a whole person as much as I wanted to be a whole entrepreneur. And so with that in mind, it was okay, how could I automate systematize things that got me to where I was in corporate America, but also I think it was setting boundaries, right? And when it needed to, right? I think you have to work really hard. Sometimes you burn the midnight oil. Sometimes you get up before the sun. It's a lot like parenting. But
yeah.
I think it's about having an end goal in mind. And for me, it wasn't never about more money. For me, it's about more time. I
Mm,
think, especially now that my kiddo is here and he just turned 2 years old not too long ago, it is quite an experience. And you can attest to this, probably can. You have a living calendar with you every
yeah.
day,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, man, the last 2 years, it somehow flew by and like felt like an eternity all at the same time. And it's a reminder to me to be like, A, slow the hell down. Like,
Yeah.
the muck that you're going through right now is okay. Because rather the muck than the ground,
Yeah.
right? Rather be here alive dealing with it than dead. But also, time is our only non-renewable resource. Money is always out there. Like, clients are always out there. But if you're sacrificing time today, for me, that's just not how I work. And I think having a child and building a family, buying a house, like being a real adult, which is just crazy to think and say, has brought me clarity on, okay, time is the priority in my life. And everything that I try to do in my business reflects in me trying to maximize my time all the time.
I love that. I love that you are at that realization right now with a 2-year-old son, because my daughter just turned 12 2 weeks ago, and well, less than 2 weeks ago. And it hit me. It's like, I might have only 7 summers left with her.
Oh, mm,
And because she wants to do all these things, and she's 12 years old. She's already talking about, well, when I go to university, I'm like, whoa, 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 don't you want to start a business? That's like her dad talking. She's like, oh, dad. And she like rolls her eyes. Hey. Uh, but I see my kids 12 and 9, and I'm like, man, like this is gonna go so fast, because you have a 2-year-old son. You said the last 2 years went by so quickly. It just stays that way. And in the moment, I think I want to push and I want to be a really good dad for them, and I want to provide for them and provide opportunities. But sometimes it's really easy for us fathers to get distracted by the outcome instead of by the
mm,
moment. And
absolutely.
most recently, I've challenged myself, and you've just reminded me of this. So thank you for reaffirming this challenge and pushing me to be more present in the moment. Because if we always are looking for that outcome, those commas in the bank account, and we're not being more precious about our time and who we're spending it with, I think we're losing the point. Hey.
I agree. I think when people go out there to figure, okay, I want to start a business, right? And I know this term and this approach has been almost cliched to death, but figuring out your why,
Mhm.
right? My why for my business is to be able to provide for my family and to give me time to spend time with them.
Yeah.
Ancillarily, I get to impact a ton of people's lives and coincidentally allow them the same result. Because if they are in jobs they love that allow them to afford the luxuries, live the lifestyle, work from home, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yeah.
right? But if you're in it to make money, I don't your success is solely based on how many dollars are in the bank, and really it's how many what do those pixels on the screen tell you? It's not even money, right? It's
Right.
what's on your screen, right? And so I think that journey of it all, right? Because you're gonna have to go through it. And I think for me, and I come from this place of knowledge, but not a place of perfection. I want to make it clear to your listeners, like, I don't have this all perfected. I am a living experiment and an ongoing practice. And so I get, bummed out. I get frustrated. I get stuck in the mud. And it takes practice. It takes self awareness. It takes self learning. It takes an amazing partner and support system to help me get out of my own way sometimes. But I also would argue that because I've prioritized those relationships, both with others and with myself on top of my business, it allows me to come out of those, dips a lot quicker and a lot better than if I was simply, slave driving myself to try to get to 6, 7, 8 figures.
Yeah. It's amazing. One of the things you said before we press record is that, your lifestyle business, you get to decide the who you work with,
Mm,
what you're doing, when you get to work on it, but also the proximity in which you get to do that with your family. And so many
mm,
times a job will take us away from our family. And I think about work, and I heard work defined by this. I can't remember who defined it this way. It said, work is something you do for someone else. You
mm.
know, work is this expenditure of energy, of knowledge, of passion that you're doing for the someone else's purpose. And often as entrepreneurs, like, oh yeah, I got a lot of work to do. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're sitting at home and you're doing your own thing, you're like, it doesn't feel like quote unquote work. How many times have you heard people say this? Oh, this is fun. It doesn't feel like work. It's because you're doing it for yourself, for your passion, for your why. So I love your mission that you're on. If there's guys listening to this right now and they're in a job, but they have a passion, have an idea in the back of their head, and they're like, I got to blow it all up to start this thing. What encouragement would you have for them to
Yeah.
start thinking uh, more along the long path of where they want to be?
I think it's about looking at your life as experiments,
Hmm.
right? I mean, in all honesty, hell, this was in my vows to my wife when we got married. We're all just making it up as we go along. Nobody has a formula. Nobody, like, there's no secret book. Like,
Yeah.
we're just trying to figure it out. And so if you can go out there and experiment in ways where you don't have to, like for me, albeit I was a younger man, was not married yet, did not have a mortgage when I started my business, but um, by moonlighting, by working a full-time job and starting the business on the side, it forced me to be extremely diligent with my time and my efforts.
Mm.
I didn't have 40 plus hours. I didn't have luxury of 40 plus hours a week to invest in starting up the business. So it forced me to work really smart, really strategically. And I think when people come to me and ask me, like, advice about starting a business, I think that's part of it. Is like, I think as humans and as problem solvers do much better in limited resources than infinite resources, because it forces us to get creative. And so if you have that burning in your head and your heart, if you're itching, go out there, and just do it. Like, there's, coming from an IT background and a project management background, one thing that one of my old coworkers told me is that if version 1.0 is perfect when you release, you're too late.
Mm.
You need to put out your idea. You need to, stress test it. You need to put it in the marketplace. You need to go ask for feedback, and then you can iterate. And if you're having trouble doing that, and I have experiences myself, look inside and say, what is the real fear? Right? Is it a fear of rejection? Is it a fear of judgment? Is it a fear of not being good enough? Is it a fear of being stuck where you are because you don't think, if this one idea I have doesn't work, then I'm stuck doing this crap job for the rest. Right? And so really look at that. And I think if you can if you can do some of that inner work to get outside of yourself, you can iterate faster, you can experiment more, and you can catch fire and get to a place where you can, take that job and shove it, so to speak.
Yeah. I like it. Okay, so now there's guys out there that have an idea, but you're dad of a 2-year-old who lives or sleeps very close in proximity to where you work. What are some of the, it sounds great working from home. It sounds great, choosing your own adventure, so to speak. But come on, it can't be that easy, right? Like there's things that are barriers, there's things that come up, the hiccups along the way, at the age that you're just passing, hiccups, throw ups, all the things, So what are some of the things that you experienced in your journey, this transition from, the 9 to 5 to the your own thing, to your own business? What are some of the things that people could expect to encounter?
I think it's really easy, especially when I'm a solo entrepreneur. I don't have a team, and so I get stuck in my head a lot.
Hmm.
And what I've learned is the more I can get out of my head, the better. You are not alone. You are not the first one to have this problem or this thought. And I think, crazily, your brain is not there to help you succeed. Your brain is to help you live,
Hmm.
right? So remembering that the worries and the stresses and the frustrations are there to just make sure you don't die. It's our caveman instinct, right? So there's that part of it, kind of battling that on a regular basis, because as an entrepreneur, as kind of, flying a plane without a parachute, as I feel like sometimes, like, there has to be a lot of self-trust. Your brain doesn't like that. Your brain wants to just have some finite truth
Yeah.
in the outside world, which
Yeah.
doesn't happen a lot as an entrepreneur. So that's definitely one huge thing, is some mental and emotional growth, and self-care has to be a regular practice if you want to be a successful and sane, semi-sane entrepreneur.
Uh,
And then I think, looking at the things that I've chosen as gifts, I think it's really easy to fall, and I do it too. I fall into this victim mentality, right? Why is this happening to me? I can't believe it. Woe is me. And what I've tried to be better at is shifting one word in that phrase. instead of why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me?
Mm.
This is trying to teach me, right? And every time I come up against an adversity, reframing it in a bit so I can learn from it. Right? That's another one of my mentors told me is like, you're in the for-profit business. It's the best part of being an entrepreneur is like you get paid to try new things rather than compensated for doing the same thing over and over again. Right. And so going out there and doing that self work and encountering challenges, positives. And then the other thing too, I mean, being a dad is it's the hardest, greatest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And so when, my kid throws a tantrum or is having a bad day or wakes up at 4 in the morning before a big client meeting, um, it is a reminder that we've chosen this.
Mhm.
Not everybody gets to make this choice. And it's a reminder that this is the life that I've built. Like this is on purpose. Like we talked earlier, like the house that I'm living in right now, the mortgage is paid for by a business that I came up with in my brain. It's
Yeah.
crazy, man.
Yeah.
The I get to sleep, I get to work next to the room that my kid sleeps in. Like my commute is 10 feet. Like I feel so blessed and so honored that when I do get stressed, I get to kind of take myself on my own lapels and be like, come on, man, like what the hell? Like you got it good. And so I think it's about getting yourself out of that space as efficiently as possible. I used to get really, and I still do, get mad at myself for getting into that place,
Mm.
feeling bad, feeling
Yeah.
worn down, feeling like a failure, and getting mad that I felt like that. And what I'm trying to be better at is not feeling bad for feeling bad, which doesn't make it any easier,
Yeah.
but feeling bad, acknowledging it, and then trying to quickly figure a way out.
It's good. Man, it's so easy to, when you're working from home and your office, which I'm sitting in my home, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
office, which used to be the nursery, by the way. Like, but when you're sitting there and something goes wrong with work, or you have a tough client call, or you get out of a conversation that just didn't go the way you want, it's so hard not to take that outside this door. So for you, you're working at home as a dad, as a husband. How do you draw boundaries between that
Yep.
door behind you and the screen that you
uh,
look at?
yeah, it's a great question because I think working from home, but also starting a startup, right? Obviously, a startup of one, a startup nonetheless. Um, easy. So for me, it's things like I only get to work either at this desk on this computer or the laptop that is outside of these four walls of my house, right? When I go out to the coffee shop to get a break, I don't. My laptop comes with me. My charger doesn't. Little things like that, and also, I mean, honestly, man, a reminder, and you can attest to this, is when I leave this door, my kid doesn't see me as a business owner, as a service provider, as a coach, and a consultant. He sees me as dad. He wants me to be dad. He wants me to play. He needs me to feed him. Probably needs a change.
Yeah.
Um, and so it just is this. I think it's been really good for me in having this living boundary, right? Like,
Yeah.
because before I could go out there and before we gave birth, like I could go out there and like I could probably work till 5 or 5:30 or 6 or 6:30, and my wife wouldn't come and bug me until it was pretty late. But now that somebody wants my attention,
Yeah.
my wife deserves a break. Like I need to spend quality time with my kid. Having that living, breathing boundary is super helpful. Because again, I don't get that. I don't. If I'm gonna, waste these next 2 hours after work today doing something, whether it makes me a next deal or doesn't, it's not worth. It can wait a day till he's back in daycare, till my wife is settled. Like nothing is worth saying no to him, for better and for worse. It's probably another boundary I get to drive is like, okay, bud, like you get to wait. We get to teach you some
Yeah.
patience.
Yeah. That will come. That will come in the journey for sure. Because your son, 2 years old now, you were sharing some of the first that you've been experiencing over the last little bit, but you said something that was really important, and you're giving an example of an experience you just had, and you said it shows that he remembers. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's intaking these experiences, and I can see evidence that he's remembering what's happening. And I think as a dad, when you start to see that, it's just eye opening like, oh, if I do take my work outside this office,
Mhm.
he's going to remember. If he sees me in a heated exchange with somebody, he might remember. So uh, what have you seen in your son the last little bit that has challenged you to be maybe more in tune or to be a better dad? Come on, we all want to be better dads. So what's
Yes.
challenged you lately?
For me, it's been just patience,
Mm,
right? Like he's 2 years old. He's got a tornado of emotions, a tornado of wants. Can't always have them at the same time he wants. Can't always deal with them at the same time he wants. And it's my job to help him process.
yeah.
And it's a reminder to myself. It's a reminder to be gentle, to be caring and loving, not only to him but to myself. So, in the last month, my realization is my anxiety, my worries, my fears, my runaway brain. It's a toddler having a tantrum.
Yeah.
And before, when I would berate myself and I would get mad at myself and I would tell myself that I'm stupid, that I'm better than this, and just not help myself at all, I would never do that in a million years. And so by having him and by raising him, it's helped me be more cognizant of the outward kind and affection and care that I give to others, as
Mhm.
well as myself. And so he's been, by testing my patience outwardly,
Yeah.
he's helped me give myself more patience inward.
Man, such a good man. That's such a good realization and this actualization of like your son's there and our kids are, man, they push us. Let's be honest. He's going to push your buttons over the next like 30 years. So
Forever. Yeah,
yeah,
lifetime.
he's going to push your buttons. But you just mentioned like the experiences you're having with your son, someone who you will give anything for, that you care so deeply about, has helped you interact with others in a more healthy way. Probably has given
Absolutely.
you a little bit more patience when you're helping, maybe a client who's not exactly holding up their end of the the agreement of like, come on, you're supposed to do this. But I think that's a good thing as a dad to take those lessons learned in your family and help them transform you as, yeah, as a leader, as a coach, as a consultant in your role. So, man, I just want to encourage you that you're doing the right things. And I think that's such a powerful observation of what you just shared. So, thank
I
you.
appreciate that, man. That means a lot. I mean, it's these lessons we talked earlier about. Everything is a lesson,
Yeah.
right? It's never how you think it's going to look. And so I think that's being
No.
open to the lesson is part of it. And then, I think for me too, you mentioned like they remember and like they see you, right? And I think for the new dads out there, I know my big thing when I found out my wife was pregnant, I was elated. I was super stoked. I actually came to her and I was like, all right, time for to start a family. Like, let's go. Like, I
Yeah.
want this. You want this. Like, I was the driver of that. I had the baby
Oh,
fever.
yeah.
But once we found out, I was like, all right, cool. Like, how am I going to do this? And so I read a ton of books. And like, my big concern is how do you raise a sensible human? Like,
Yeah.
how do you teach emotional intelligence? How do you like all this stuff? It's like all these intangibles. How do I teach that? How do I make sure this kid's just not an a-hole?
Yeah.
And as many books as I read, and I got some stuff out of it, but the things that I kept coming back to me and the people that I talked to said the most powerful thing you can do is model.
Mhm.
Be the thing that you want that little person. And it's when it's easy, it's really easy. It's just you. And when it's hard, it means that you got to change your own. And I think that's the thing is that it's if you want to raise a decent human, you have to leave completely in integrity. And that's I think the biggest gift he's given to me so far.
I love it. So, Colby, as a dad, what's one area of growth maybe that you're diving into right now that you're, either hitting your head up against or you're really excited about? What's one thing you're diving into?
Yeah, I think for me, it is always the practice of presence,
Mm,
right? Like, I think as a dad, you know, gender norms aside, like we shoulder a lot of stuff, right? We want to make sure our families are safe, they're healthy, they're fed, roof over their head. I want to make sure my clients are well. I want to make sure, like, I got to go pick up the car from the mechanic later. Like, I got so many plates spinning in my head, right? Being better at calming that busy mind, you know, compartmentalizing and actioning on my anxieties when it's time, just being freaking present,
Mhm.
right? It's such a, I keep touting time and energy and not being an infinite resource. And I say all this because I need to hear it too, right? Like I need to make sure that I'm present, that I'm not wasting this time. And so it's always presence. It's
Yeah.
easy to be distracted. It's easy to be in 9 places at once and be nowhere at the same time. But I think as long as I continue to press towards more presence, even though I might not be perfected there, I'm getting to a place I want to be.
Thanks for sharing. Man, I'm so glad that you came on this show because, like I said, just to hear from a real, like a guy who's very real about his experience, real about, hey, I needed to leave my 9 to 5 to be the dad and the husband that I wanted to be. I needed to be able to make an impact in the lives of others. You've mentioned that a mentor told you multiple times in this conversation the power of mentorship and seeking someone else to guide you. And you just said something that I think gets overlooked by those who are in quote unquote coaching consulting roles. And you said in it, I just reminded me of the power of sometimes when we speak and we're helping encourage others, whether it's a client or our kids, we will say things and we're like, that sounded really good. But I think the person who needed to hear that the most was the one who said it. Right? Doesn't that happen?
I
So,
have, I
oh, I,
cannot, I've lost count at how many times I've gotten off a client call and my wife will open the door to the office and say, like, you heard what you said, right? Like, you just, I want to make sure that you're hearing the words coming out of your mouth that,
yeah.
you should listen to those too. And
Yeah.
that's also, yeah, exactly. I'm in this business because I want to help others, but in doing so, and maybe I think you're the same way, it's like I could help myself. And
Yeah.
it's so, I'm blessed, it's joyous, it's good and it's hard work. And I'm so happy to be doing it on a daily basis.
Awesome, Colby. Colby, if guys want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, or connect with you, where can they do that?
Best place for me would be to go to kolbygoodman.com, Kolby Goodman, Goodman.com. That's my website. Feel free to get a hold of me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search Kolby Goodman in the search bar. I am the only one out there. If you are thinking about entrepreneurship, let me know. I can kind of walk you through all the mistakes that I made, or if you're trying to level up your career, if you want to work remote, if you need to make more money, if you just want to reinvent yourself in your traditional career, let me know too. That's my expertise. That's my specialty. Would love to help you change your career and change your life.
Excellent. We'll make sure all of your contact info is in the show notes. If you're listening to this, you need to reach out to Colby. If you're on the brink of making the decision in your life, whether you're going to leave your 9 to 5, you're not quite sure where to go, or maybe you're like, hey, a job's okay with me, but I want my dream job.
Mm-hmm.
Colby's the guy you need to talk to. So, Colby, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking time away from your family to spend with us here on the podcast today.
Cam, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. Was this an invigorating and heart-filled conversation? I really appreciate it.